Solana is running out of time. Over the last 4 months, we have been talking about this descending triangle in which we've been stuck within ever since realistically September, October of last year. Well, in today's video, we are going to kind of analyze and go over the ideas in which we have on where this thing is going to go, if we've seen this before, and how we can expect to maximize gains in crypto, whether it breaks out to the upside or whether it breaks to the downside. So with that being said, of course, let's go ahead and let's just jump straight into it and let's get to the good stuff. So looking at Solana here, again, we're focusing on this falling / descending triangle. Now, I'm going to start this off by saying not only have we seen this before, we have also seen the setup in terms of divergences and in terms of the MACD also before. So what we're going to do in today's video is compare what we're seeing now to what we saw in history and how that, how historically this thing has reacted. So starting off with what we're seeing, let's go ahead and let's talk about what we need to pay the most amount of attention to. Well, of course, we have our highs, we have our lows. And of course, we did get, our 1, 2, 3 touch trend, which is always going to be important to establish a true level of support. Now, at this point, we need to start to pay attention to where does this thing get breakout? Because realistically, when Solana gets breakouts from these, consolidational / descending triangles, they're usually going to be between 70 and 75% of the way through. Now, let's kind of look at what I mean by that. If we kind of go ahead and go from the bottom here to where the apex of this triangle, it was about 200 days, okay? Now, the point in which we broke out was going to be right around 150 days. And so that is going to be right around the 75% of the way through. If we look at this example, we can see that from the point of the first bottom, which is where I like to go from personally, to the apex, we're looking at right around 100 days. And from the point of the bottom right here to the breakout, we are looking at roughly about 67 days, so right under 70%. So 75% and 70%. And if we look at where we are now from the bottom to the apex, let's go ahead and see, that's about 228 days, and we are currently sitting about 168 days in. So if we do go ahead and get our calculator out, 168 divided by 228, you can see we are about 73% of the way in, which generally is going to be the point in which we do start to see some changes happen and a possible breakout one way or another. Historically, they have both broken to the upside, but you never know. It does not mean that it is going to happen again this time. But what I want to do is, now that we know that a breakout is very likely going to happen within the next couple weeks, I think it's important that we do start to focus on what this setup looks like and how we can expect it to go one way or another. Now, what I want to talk about mostly is the comparisons to what we saw back from September / August of 2020 to what we saw from until December of 2020. Now, if you guys do remember this, I remember hearing about Solana back then, but I never really looked into it. But we had this huge first moment for Solana where it kind of took center stage and people got excited about it. Now, of course, as per usual, as this excitement did dwindle, we started to see the price work its way into a consolidational / descending triangle. Now, in the same time frame in which we started to put in some of these lower lows and lower highs, we started to notice a divergence forming on the bottom side here, in which I have highlighted. You can see that we had these lower lows and higher lows on the RSI. And in the event in which we did start to put in, say, this touch up here, we also started to see bearish divergence on the chart, which looks like us setting this higher high while still setting this lower high, right? So we're seeing bearish divergence on the top, bullish divergence on the bottom. And after we did see that same formula, after we did see that same setup, we got the excitement going into 2021 that did lead the price to see the breakout to the upside. Now, looking at that in comparison to what we are seeing now, it is a very similar setup. It's very similar in the sense that we are seeing that same, the same thing, the lower low here, the higher low here. We are setting continuous higher lows while setting continuous lower lows at this point. Now, not only are we seeing this bullish divergence on the bottom side by seeing the lower lows and the higher lows, we are seeing bearish divergence on the top side by setting lower highs and higher highs on the RSI. Again, very similar to what we saw here. Now, again, the other similarities are that they are similar in nature of structure. Of course, we have this descending triangle and a descending triangle, and they are similar in the sense of time frames in which, the certain times in which we've been in them are similar in terms of when we started to see these divergences. We saw these divergences around 60 to 70% of the way in, and we're seeing these divergences 60 to 70% of the way in. So we're going to talk now about what are going to be some signs and some clues of where we're going to break out from and how I am going to play it. So let's talk about the downside. Let's talk about the worst case scenario right now, in which we come down and we start to lose roughly about $75. I would say if we lose $75, things are probably not looking the absolute best for us, and we may need to start to anticipate this thing to either roll into the bottom of this apex before finding the support and climbing, or eventually crashing back down towards this $60 to even $50 range. The reason I think 75 is going to be of key significance is for three real strong reasons. First of all, at $79, we have this key level of resistance here. This previous level of resistance now looking to be flipped into a support. Now, we can also see that this key level of resistance, hoping to be flipped into support, also serves as the 1.272 Fibonacci extension from this swing high down to swing low event, in which once we found out our Fibonacci's, we turned on one of our 1.272 extensions, and that is the key zone of expected volume, right? So that is another reason, right? So not only is it just structural resistance, but it's Fibonacci resistance and support. And now the last reason is going to be looking at just the general liquidity in this area. If we kind of zoom in here on bookmap at Solana, this is going to be Solana just in terms of volume, just in terms of the liquidity. We can see that at $75, there's about 90,000 Solana sitting in the order book for this specific order book. And at 70, there's about 53,000. So what that means is that we can expect there to be a pretty significant amount of liquidity and a pretty significant amount of buyers willing to step in around that $75 area. There is no other area at this point, not 75, not 70, not 60, not 50, no other area that has a stronger amount of liquidity at this point than what we are seeing at $75. And so if the price is capable of going through $75, lose $75, I think that it becomes much more likely that we do start to see the price rolling to the downside, as many of our active buyers did start to see the price falling below their buy limits, and it does show that the selling pressure is much heavier than the buying pressure at this point. And so for that reason, I would be on the lookout for $75. And as long as we are above that, I would go ahead and say we are still looking good for the breakout to the upside, as the setup does remain similar to what we saw historically. Okay. Not only that, though, if we do look at the weekly MACD, we can also see here that we are starting to see, a possible sign of bullishness, right? But we aren't seeing the full bullish conversion yet. And so it would be easy that if we do fall into, below $75, below $72, and we start to roll, it would be easy for the MACD to continue its trek towards the downside. But if we're capable of holding above 75, if we are capable of seeing this roll here and getting back up towards the $90 area at this point, we can see that we have started to converge in a way. We have started to slow down this in the sense that if we do start to roll, it also would be just as easy for us to see this bullish cross in which we have been looking for. Because don't forget, we have extreme bullish divergence here, right? Low, higher low, low, lower low. That is extreme bullish divergence. That is also taking place within the 30 range now. That makes it even stronger. And so considering the fact that there is that extreme potential, we need to make sure that those key support levels around 75, around $70 do hold. Again, expect that if we lose $75, watch for the break to the bottom side here. We break to the bottom side, and if we lose it, I am under the belief we will come back to this previous macro high around $60, and I will be opening a short position, of course, dependent on where we are in here. If we do lose this key level, I will be looking to take on a mini short trade, as I think we would wick down at least for a split second towards $60, and I do want to take advantage of that. But in the event in which 75 does hold and we do find the support to break to the top side here, do be on the lookout for Solana to likely revisit this previous macro high sitting right around $107, in which I will be taking on a short-term long trade. So again, at this point, it doesn't really matter where Solana goes, and there's no one on earth who can predict confidently where this thing is going to go with the current environment in which we are seeing. But what we can do is prepare based off of history what could happen and how we could go about it, so that no matter if it breaks to the downside or if it breaks to the upside, we are prepared because we see the early warnings and we take advantage of it by going on a short trade or going on a long trade, right? My goal here is to not tell you what's going to happen in the future, because personally I don't know, but I can look at the data and say, okay, this is what's happened historically and this is how I think it could happen, so here are my options, and I hope you guys do use those options as they do help. So with that being said, of course, I'm not a financial advisor. Do understand that. I'm just a guy who studied the charts a lot and does want to present my information to you. So if you are making investment decisions, make sure you consult with people who do have, more of a knowledge in the terms of investment services and financial providers. But personally speaking, this is my game plan. This is my setup, and this is how I'm going about it, because I do think this is going to be a pretty surefire way to maximize gains, whether we break to the downside towards 50 or break to the upside towards $107. So with that said, of course, whenever I do get to buying this thing, if we do get a break to the upside here, do understand that realistically, if we break to the upside, I probably will start to accumulate for my long-term position, and I do all of that through iTrust Capital. So it's going to be real simple. What I suggest all of you to do is at minimum just open an account for free and verify your email when they send you the email. I think that it is pretty bogus that we could be spending up to 40% on every single gain that we make on all of these trades on taxes. I think it's bogus. I think it's honestly a little bit ridiculous. And so for that reason, I do my majority of my long-term accumulating on iTrust Capital. So what I highly suggest you guys to do is, again, open an account and verify your email. And once they send you the email, you can see all of your options and how you can possibly be saving up to, again, 40% on every single gain you make. I think it's pretty ridiculous for people to lose that much. So I would avoid it earlier on before these things do start to explode by at least trying it out. The link will be in the description below. But with that said, of course, that is going to be about it for today's video. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you all next time. Peace.